This is a guy they charged with 19 murders. He got convicted with 11 of those murders. He was on the run for, I believe, 18 years until his capture finally. Now they're pursuing the guys that killed him, getting justice for Whitey Bulger's family. Remember, it's not the family's fault. When one of us, on the street did something, you don't blame our families. It's not their fault. So even though Whitey Bulger was charged with 19 murders, convicted of committing 11, his family's not responsible for that. So his family wanted some justice for Whitey Bulger because the circumstances surrounding his murder were just very suspicious. And we're going to read through that.
I walk in redemption.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. Everything is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, I give God all the praise, honor, and glory, and thanksgiving for that. 3 quick announcements. I know everybody gets annoyed, or some people do if I don't get right into the content today, but just quickly, Maniac, M-I-N-N-E-C-T. I've been getting a lot of people contacting me on Maniac for either video, phone calls, or text messages. We go back and forth. It's a great platform. MINNECT.com was created by Patrick Bet-David, my good friend. A lot of good people on there. So if you want to be in touch with me, get some mentorship, some good advice, whatever your thing is, we can talk, or we can certainly text through that. Cameo, getting a lot of cameos all the time. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, whatever the occasion might be. So keep them coming. We enjoy doing those little videos. And then finally, on next Tuesday, the 16th of July, at Corona Del Mar Restaurant, CDM Restaurant, I am going to be there personally. We're going to have a big wine tasting event, a food pairing event. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of people coming. I'll tell you a little bit about things that we've got going on. So it's going to be a good night. You're going to enjoy our wine, Franzese wine. So look at the graphic. It's up there. You got to get your tickets. I think it's almost sold out, but you can try to get on. I think we still have some room. So that's it. Many of you get upset when I start to get into current events and current issues. I get that. This platform was originally built on me telling a lot of mob stories, me giving some of my history, my relationships with some guys, names that you know. By the way, the canvas behind me, let me tell you the deal because people are asking. We had sold out. We had only a limited edition sale of these things. We sold out, but by popular demand, people are asking more for them. So we're going to have another run. Probably going to start next week. We're just compiling my partner on this, who is the magnificent artist, I have to say. He's making some more ready. He's doing what he needs to do. And then we're going to offer it out again on a limited basis. They went crazy in Europe for this. I'm sure many of you are going to enjoy it. And I am going to be talking about 50 of the men that are on there. Almost all of them you know. The only 2 alive are me and Sammy Gravano, but everybody else I'm going to be talking about, giving a brief description and some things that you don't know about each man on this list. It's very special, this canvas, this tapestry. So you can go to our website, goldeneracollections.com. We'll put up a graphic for those of you that want it. You can order it and we'll get it out to you fairly soon. And like I said, we'll probably be doing a live about it next week to give some more information. So like I was saying, people get, Michael, why do you get into politics? You built this channel on mob stories. I get it. And I do understand that. And we're going to continue to do this. But, back in the 70s and 80s, in my era in that life, people, I'm not kidding you. Every other day, sometimes every day, New York Times, New York Post, all over the news media, you'd have a story about one of us, Obviously Gotti, he was in the news. My father was in the news all the time back in the 60s and early 70s. And they were always writing about something, another arrest, something going on. We don't see that anymore. I've exhausted a lot of the stories, all the things that at least I can remember. Sometimes things comes into my head and I'll remember them. But most everything has been exhausted. And now, I'm telling you, I read the New York Post and the Daily News just about every morning. Maybe every 6 months you see a story about the guys. So what is there to talk about that hasn't been talked about already? We did Mob Movie Monday. We're running out of mob movies, but I'm going to be starting to do that again. I met a very interesting guy yesterday in the airport. He was the guy that invented or created Hot Cheetos. It was actually a movie made about it called Flamin' Hot. documentary or a movie. I'm going to be bringing him on. Very interesting story, Mexican, but I love the guy, him and his son. I'm going to be reviewing that, flaming hot, and then bringing him on to talk about it. It was a really interesting conversation we had in the airport. He came over to me, he recognized me, his son is a follower, so that's cool. We got that coming up. I got a lot of good interviews coming up. I'm not going to reveal them right now, but a lot of good stuff. So let me get in what we're going to talk about today. It is mob related, so be happy. And you know what? I don't understand why you don't want to talk about some of these crazy issues that are going on today. We have a mafia democracy in power right now. It's so obvious, a mafia democracy that's concealing information, doing all sorts of things that we did on the street. But people say, oh, come on, Michael, you know, it's politics. Not politics. It's issues, people, that are affecting your life. You know, Patrick Bet-David, he did a thing today where people can't go on vacation. The price of airfare went up 25%. Why? Can't get jet fuel at a reasonable price. Why? Because jets don't run on electric. You know, I know Biden wants everybody to have electric cars. Well, electric jets don't work. They're not going to carry you in the air. So fuel is expensive. All of these expenses get passed on to the consumer and make it difficult to enjoy your life. So this is not politics, it's issues. I'm not going to deal with it today. Look for me on Rumble. Go to rumble.com and you'll see me on there. We talk about all of this stuff, and my audiences, my viewers are really building because they want to hear my perspective. A lot of stuff going on. Let me know in the comments section if you want me to talk about things like that or not. Please let me know. It's so important. We got a vital election coming up and people need to know the truth. And I have no horse in this race other than my concern for my children, my grandchildren, and people I love in America and the country that I love. I want to see it exist. Things are happening that are really, really taking us downhill. We have to change it. And on November 5th, that needs to happen. If you want me to talk about it, let me know. If you want me to continue with mob stuff, let me know. Give me your comments, voice your opinion. I really appreciate it. Today, I'm going to talk about Whitey Bulger. Why? Because I came across a very interesting story about Whitey Bulger and his murder. And I'm going to read from it. It was very, very interesting. And I think it's something that I want to emphasize towards the end. But we'll talk about it. This is the title of the article. It's a mafia hitman, a mobster, and a newly released inmate who killed Whitey Bulger. Okay, I think they know at this point who killed Whitey Bulger, but let me read the article and let me comment on it. A mafia hitman who murdered a mob capo and harbors a deep hatred for snitches, that's one. A Boston mobster involved in the savage 1996 murder and dismemberment of a 19-year-old girl, pretty disgusting, and a man with no known mob ties who just recently walked free from prison. These are the three guys that I understand now confessed to the murder of Whitey Bulger. But let's listen to this story, and then I just want you to think about what it is we're saying here. Think about the government. Think about how sometimes they do things that are beyond belief, quite honestly, beyond belief. So just listen to this story. On August 17th, these three men were charged with the 2018 jailhouse killing of one of the most notorious mob bosses in American history. August 17th, obviously a few years back. These three men reached plea deals with prosecutors according to court papers filed on May 13th, 2024. Two of the men were accused of repeatedly striking Bulger in the head while one served as a lookout. An inmate witness told authorities that two men used a belt with a lock attached to it to beat Bulger to death. Pretty rough. Prosecutors said last year they would not seek the death sentence for the two men who were charged with the murder. They're already doing life sentences. All three men were charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, which carries up to a life sentence. And one man was also charged with making false statements to a federal agent. So you got three guys. Two of them that actually perpetrated the crime. They agreed to it. They copped a plea to it. They got a lock in a pillowcase and beat him mercilessly, I should say, to death while one guy stood lookout. Now, two of the guys were already doing life sentences. The third guy, he got out of prison. He was let out on supervised release. And after this confession was made, they brought him back in. So he's now back in jail, and he's going to get a certain amount of time with respect to that. As the leader of the infamous Winter Hill Gang, James Whitey Bulger, who many of you are very familiar with, terrorized the streets of Boston in the 70s and 80s, murdering gangland rivals and ratting out fellow mobsters to the FBI. For more than a decade, the Irish Mafia boss topped the FBI's most wanted list, coming second only to Al-Qaeda leader and the man behind 9/11, Osama bin Laden. But now U.S. authorities are pursuing justice for his own murder. Imagine this. This is a guy they charged with 19 murders. He got convicted with 11 of those murders. He was on the run for, I believe, 18 years until his capture finally. Now they're pursuing the guys that killed him, getting justice for Whitey Bulger's family. Remember, it's not the family's fault. When one of us, on the street did something, you don't blame our families. It's not their fault. So even though Whitey Bulger was charged with, 19 murders, convicted of committing 11, his family's not responsible for that. So his family wanted some justice for Whitey Bulger because the circumstances surrounding his murder were just very suspicious. And we're going to read through that. 3 men were behind bars with Bulger at the U.S. Penitentiary Hazleton in West Virginia when he was savagely beaten beyond all recognition over 4 years ago. They really went to work on this guy. Nearly 4 months after their arrests, a damning Justice Department watchdog report found that, quote, serious prison failures occurred in the end, leading up to Bulger's murder. Now, what does that bring you back to? Serious prison failures. Does it make you think of Epstein? As I read a little bit more, I think Epstein is going to pop into your mind here. Listen to this. It was the morning of the 30th of October 2018 when Bulger, who had arrived at the federal prison just 12 hours earlier, he was there only 12 hours, was beaten to death with a heavy padlock inside a sock. He was found by prison guards wrapped in blankets and posed to appear as if he was sleeping. But Bulger was 89 years old and in a wheelchair at the time. Now, these are some unanswered questions about that. So here's the scene. They beat him to death, they wrapped him in a blanket, and they put him in a cell, made it look like he was sleeping, but he wasn't. Now, how do they know they beat him like this? Well, it was caught on the prison cameras. Cameras everywhere. You normally don't get away with this stuff. You even see in television series and movies, when they're dramatizing this and somebody wants to get beat up in prison by other inmates, when somebody gets beaten up by other inmates, they try to go to a section of the prison where there are no cameras. There's cameras everywhere. It's very difficult to do that and not get noticed. Very difficult to hang yourself, Epstein, and not get noticed. Unanswered questions. Surveillance footage had shown at least 2 inmates rolling Bulger into the corner of his cell and beating him with a padlock inside a sock. I think I might have said a pillowcase. I'm sorry. It was a sock. According to the New York Times. It's also likely that cameras around the prison captured the killer or the killers entering and leaving the cell, yet the investigation rumbled on for years. Now, why did the investigation go on for years? You know why? Because there's a lot of suspicion around why Bulger was even in that prison. Why was he even sent there? Was it a mistake? Well, let me tell you this. I'll give them this. The Bureau of Prisons does make mistakes. I've repeated this, or I've said this once before, I should say, maybe more than once, that while Henry Hill was in prison and on separation from guys like me, because the word out was to kill Henry Hill, because of his being informant, I was in general population. By mistake, they sent Henry Hill to Terminal Island, where I was and probably 10 other mob guys. Now, he was noticed by me. It was an absolute mistake because he was on separation from me and from some of these other guys. So they sent it there by mistake. When Henry Hill saw me, he PC'd up, he put himself in protective custody, and then he was shipped out. But he was there by mistake from the Bureau of Prisons, and the lieutenant told me that specifically. So do they make mistakes? Yes. Fortunately for Henry Hill, it wasn't critical at that point. I'm not saying I would have killed him, okay, but there were other people in there that certainly might have caused some damage to him. Let's read on. So like I said, cameras everywhere. Think of Epstein in his cell trying to hang himself, going unnoticed by cameras or by guards that were guarding him normally 24/7. Questions also remain around how Bulger ended up being sent to the Notorious prison in the first place and why he was placed among the general population. Now, here's a guy that was an informant, a former mob guy. It was all over the streets that he was an informant. Everybody knew about it, but they send him to this particular prison, and let's see why it was suspicious. Several New England mobsters were already housed at Hazleton. That's where he came out of, Bulger did, New England. And the penitentiary was also known to be a dangerous place for government informants. Bulger was, of course, both mobster and FBI informant. In the 6 months before his arrival, listen to this, in October 2018, 3 other inmates had been murdered there. So 3 other inmates were murdered in that prison in the 6 months prior to Whitey Bulger being sent there. For Bulger, he only lasted 12 hours in that prison. Before being sent to Hazleton, the high-profile mobster Bulger had been at Coleman Federal Prison in Florida since 2014. The Florida prison, Coleman, was known to be a safe haven for inmates like Bulger who were in need of extra protection, and the elderly mobster's time there was largely uneventful. That was until February 2018 when a prison official said he clashed with a female medical worker. The notorious murderer allegedly threatened the staff member, telling her, "Your day of reckoning is coming." Now, he was 89 years old at this point. Now, I got to tell you something. My dad, who was 103, was in a senior living home. And allegedly he made a remark, this is while he was on supervised release. So allegedly he made a remark to a nurse that was just off color. Well, they got in touch with me and said, we're going to have to move your father back to supervision, a supervised place, because of the remark that he made to this staff worker. And they did remove him. I couldn't stop him. I got him back a day later because it wasn't anything serious. He was 100 years old. The staff member didn't press charges, so they brought him back. But that could be a situation where they do remove you. But he's 89 years old, sickly and in a wheelchair. So how much damage could he have caused? After 7 months in solitary confinement for the incident, he was transferred to Hazleton. Why did they pick Hazleton? As part of his transfer, his medical classification had to be downgraded because that was a higher level institution. His medical problem would have prohibited him from going there. But what did they do? They downgraded it. He's 89 years old in a wheelchair, but in order to send him to a higher level institution, they happened to downgrade his level of his health problems. Why? That in itself is pretty suspicious. There's so many other institutions they could have sent him to without an issue. They could have sent him to level 2s or 3s, which are, not dangerous places at all, but they didn't. Despite him being 89, suffering heart conditions, and being in a wheelchair, they still downgraded the seriousness of his ailments. Prison officials and Bulger's own family slammed the decision to put Bulger in general population in a troubled prison known to be dangerous to snitches. 3 people are killed within 6 months before Bulger gets there. It's a prison known to be dangerous to snitches. There are high-profile inmates in there that were convicted of murder, that came out of the same area that he came out of. Why did they send him there? Was that a mistake? Doesn't sound like the same issue as Henry Hill had. An anonymous prison workers union official described the move as, quote, a death sentence in an interview with the Associated Press in 2018. So here's prison officials saying they sent him there to get killed. Basically, that's what he's saying. Sure sounds like it. Serious prison failures revealed in a bombshell DOJ report. Nearly a year later, a bombshell 99-page report from the DOJ Office of the Inspector General revealed that inmates at Hazleton in West Virginia knew in advance Bulger was being transferred there from Coleman in Florida and had been taking bets on how long before he would be killed. Okay, so all the inmates knew he was coming. How did they know? They don't just hear it through the grapevine. Prison officials talked about it. Guards talked about it. Guards do make friends with some of the inmates. Happens. I know. I did 8 years there. Happens. So they're talking about Whitey Bulger coming. Prison officials knew it. Inmates knew it. And they were talking about it. They were already planning his murder prior to him getting there. And let me tell you something. There's so many informants in the system, inmate informants. And I guarantee 100% based upon my experience, the time I did in jail, that these informants went to the prison officials and said, hey, Whitey's going to have a tough time when he gets here. It's going to be bad. They shouldn't send him here. They absolutely knew what was going on. I got to tell you this. When I was in Terminal Island, listen to this. It's a true story. I'm in Terminal Island, and all I cared about was my visits and my phone calls. That's all I cared about. So the woman, we were on a point system for visits. We had, I think, 50 points a month. And on the weekend, every hour was 2 points. During the week, an hour was 1 point. So if you had a lot of visits, like I did, my wife lived close by, she'd visit me 5 days a week, those points were gone in a week and a half. Now we're looking at the whole month. So I got friendly with one of the guards that was monitoring the prison points. And I said to her, it was a female, I said, listen, do me a favor, I get a lot of visits, I don't cause any trouble in here. Can you just, overlook some of the things? And she was cool. I knew she was going to be cool with me. I wouldn't have talked to her if she wasn't. And she said, don't worry about it, right? I'm getting a lot of visits. I get called a couple of weeks later by the lieutenant. Lieutenant says, Franzese, I got to sit down with you. I said, what's up? He said, you getting a lot of visits lately? I said, normal. My wife lives close by. She comes, brings my kids. I enjoy it. Yeah, you live for visits, phone calls, and letters in here. He said, well, I got to tell you something. He said, you set a record for notes being placed under the door with respect to your visits. I said, what do you mean? He said, the inmates are counting your hours in the visiting room, and they total up to a lot more than 50 points. He said, you set a record. That's how many people are snitching on you. Would you believe that? And they do it anonymously, or they do it and want, a little something in return. Sometimes they'll put their name on it if they're known prison informants to the officials. So my point is, okay, they know what's going on. I didn't get any trouble for that because the lieutenant was a friend of mine, and he said, I'm just letting you know, watch yourself in here. Okay. So they knew he was coming. They knew inmates in there were planning no good. They still transferred him. More than 100 Bureau of Prison officials knew in advance about Bulger's transfer and had been speaking openly about it in front of the inmates against BOP policy, and despite the 89-year-old being at risk of being targeted by other inmates. So the guards were talking about it, the correctional officers, they were talking about it, the inmates knew about it, everybody knew he was coming. Everybody knew that there could be a problem. The inmates knew it, the prison officials knew it. 3 people had been murdered within 6 months of him being there. There's guys in there from the same area that he came in that were mob related. 2 of them had ties to the, local guys over in that area, and yet they still let him come. They downgrade his medical issues to make him eligible to go to that prison, higher institution. So all this has taken place. They still let him go. And when he gets there, do they put him in solitary? No, they put him right out in general population. Sound suspicious? The manager reportedly denied being aware of any threats against Bulger. Everybody knew it. He denied it. Despite inmates saying that, quote, everyone knew he would be killed in the prison because they said he was a rat. That word circulates quickly and everybody knows it. They still sent him there. Several BOP officials interviewed as part of the probe also claimed to be unaware of the notoriety of one of the infamous figures in organized crime. These prison officials said they didn't know who Whitey Bulger was. Come on, man. Do you believe that? It was all over the news. His trial was all over the news. His capture was all over the news for weeks and months, and the trial was highly publicized. But they didn't know it. It's all over the prison system. It's all over the media. Everybody's talking about it, but they claim they didn't know or never heard of Whitey Bulger and his notoriety. These people just lie. I've interviewed figures in organized crime who has been memorialized in books and movies, including Johnny Depp's Black Mass. Everybody knew who he was. The report also cites the deeply troubling level of care for Bulger, given he was 89 years old, wheelchair-bound, and suffered from heart conditions which often required hospital treatment. So here's a guy that needs to go to the hospital. Why didn't they send him to Springfield? Why didn't they send him to one of the prison hospitals? He's 89 years old. He's got heart conditions. He's suffering from all sorts of health issues. but they send him to a higher institution prison. They downgrade his health issues in order to send him there. There's 3 murders that happen in advance of him coming there. They don't like snitches. It's all over the prison, but they put him there in general population, and he doesn't last 12 hours. But nobody knew about it. Is this a setup or what? In our view, no BOP inmates transfer, whether they are a notorious gangster or a nonviolent offender, should be handled like Bulger's transfer was handled in this instant, the report states. So, the report is stating, okay, the report that they did afterwards, that this was totally mishandling of Bulger's situation. Totally. Now, how does something like this happen? Does this not show the ineptitude of the government? The deceitfulness of the government? You know, when I say, you know, people have blood on their hands, you think that I'm just making this up or I'm trying to dramatize? When we got people coming over the southern border that are killing people here, do you think I'm dramatizing when I'm saying the people responsible for that have blood on their hands? I'm not. This is real. This is your government. This is why I tell you to read this book. You'll understand it. I'm not dramatizing this. It's true. This was a setup. All these people in the Bureau of Prisons can't be that ignorant. Not one person would come forward and say, hey, you can't send this guy here. They're talking all over. They're going to kill this guy. Why did they downgrade his medical issues? Blood on their hands. Now, I'm sure no one outside of the family is shedding a tear for Whitey Bulger, and probably they shouldn't. He wasn't a good guy. Let's face it, he was a bad guy. There's no question about it. But listen, if you want to give the guy a death sentence or the electric chair, well then convict him and do it properly, because the government does not have the right to take somebody's life illegally. They don't. Period. That's the government. They're not criminals. They're not breaking the law. They're supposed to be upholding the law, and there's never an excuse for them to break the law. And I said that a lot of times. Some people disagree. Even in Whitey Bulger's case, there's no excuse for them to get him killed. None whatsoever. If they wanted to do that, they should have shot him before they arrested him, said he was trying to escape, whatever. They have no reason to do something like this, or they're not justified to do something like this. I'm sure no one outside his family is shedding a tear for Whitey Bulger. I said that, but that's not the point. The point is a failure of another branch of our Justice Department. Almost every government agency, right up to the White House, a total lack of integrity, an atmosphere of deceit. And who suffers on this? The American people. People, this is a terrible situation. They sent this guy there to get killed. There's no question. They couldn't have been this, lax in all of this, that nobody knew. They knew. They sent him there purposely. They downgraded his health issues so they can send him to a higher level institution. They knew the 3 guys had gotten killed prior to that. The FBI, all the prison guards were talking about it. All the inmates were talking about it. Whistleblowers were telling the guards that he was going to get killed. They sent him there anyway. The guy didn't last 12 hours. Now, go back to Jeffrey Epstein. Different situation, okay, but similar. The cameras didn't work. All of a sudden, the guards fell asleep. But what happened? Epstein has got dirt on a lot of powerful people. A lot of powerful people. Do you hear that? This guy didn't commit suicide. I don't care what anybody says. He had the goods on a lot of people, okay? And he could have hurt a lot of people. He could have destroyed careers. They're not going to negotiate with him. They had him in their environment, perfect situation, so they killed the guy. That's what I believe. I'm sorry. And nobody's going to tell me any different. And here's another example of that. People, listen, I know you don't want to hear politics. These are not politics. These are issues that are affecting all of our lives. We have a government that is running out of control, and we have to get it back into control. This is a government for the people and by the people, and we can't forget that. Don't cover for anyone. We can't. And I'm going to say this again. If you people can't accept the fact that I talk about these issues on this platform, let me know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Fortunately, we have Rumble, and we can go there and you can hear my perspective, and a lot of people are appreciating it. That platform is building fast, and we do other things also. But that's it. I want you to look at this Whitey Bulger situation and say to yourself, is this the government that we're entrusting our lives to? They set people up to get killed, even though he's a criminal. It's not their right to do that. They have to obey the law. If the government doesn't obey the law, what do we have? We have random chaos and anarchy. Anybody can be a victim of it. You too, all the people that are watching this, you can be a victim of this. You can't let this happen. We have to have law and order. We have to have somebody that is going to enforce the law, and we're going to have a government that obeys the laws that they create. That's it for today, my friends. And you know, I get passionate about this because, listen, we live in a constitutional republic. This is a democracy, people. I know I'm trying to define it the right way because people jump on me when I say we live in a democracy. You understand what I mean. We have freedom. We have laws. We're a country of laws that should be upheld by the people that create them, especially. And if that goes wild, everybody is in trouble. Everybody. And we see it happening now. So, pay attention to this, please, and understand the bottom line, what the meaning is. And yes, you know I don't plug this book often, but go on Amazon or go on my website. Let me sign one for you and get it. You got to read the book because you got to be aware and alert and know what's going on with these people. Look what's going on today with Biden. Everybody's covering up for this guy. They knew for 4 years he wasn't capable. They hid it. Their hatred for Trump made them hide it. They don't care about China and Russia and all our enemies seeing this and gearing up to go against the weak president. They don't care about that. They don't care about the border crisis that's happening. They don't care about the inflation. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is remaining in power, keeping Trump out of office. Why? Trump is going to do good for the country. That's the bottom line, and he's not controllable by them, and they don't like it. They're going to lose their position. Oh, he's going to destroy democracy. That's not what they're afraid of. They're afraid of losing their position. And they're afraid of, in the back of their minds, will Trump get even for all the garbage we threw at this guy? For all the things we've done to him over the past several years, ever since he walked down that escalator? Everything we threw at him? Nothing's going to happen to them. Don't worry about it. Trump don't care about you. He cares about making America great again. That's it for today, my friends. How do I always leave you? Same way. Be safe. Again, please, ladies, you know the drill. Be healthy. And yes, I mean this. God bless each and every one of you and your families. And God bless America. See you next time.